Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
I'm very well. How are you, my friend? You good?
I'm good. I finally slept last night. I bought my flat yesterday, Leo.
Congratulations. Brilliant. So hold on. You picked the hottest time of year to sort of buy a flat and move around Barcelona. I mean, it must have been quite a couple of days, right?
Right. Yeah, it was. It is 28 degrees in my flat right now. I do not have air conditioning. I have the fan like full on my face. So yeah, very hot. But it's
sweaty. So congrats, you're now a homeowner. Did you like your new neighborhood?
Yeah, it's good. So I mean, the signing was a bit of a adventure, I guess we can say. So signed everything. And when the notary, all the paperwork was signed, the notary turns to the former owners and says, "Okay, you can hand over the keys now." And they said, "Oh yeah, we'll call you and we'll organize over the next 2 weeks to give you the keys." And we all were just silent and stunned. What do you mean the next 2 weeks? No, the notary was like, no, she owns the apartment now. It's her apartment, so you have to give her the keys. And the owners were like, no, but we have 15 days. The agency told us we have 15 days to be out. And it was very awkward. So I went and talked to the notary. The notary's like, look, you got to go in there and just be nice and see what you can work out. Like, you don't want to have, an incident. There's historically in Spain and in Barcelona in particular, especially in certain neighborhoods of the city center, of which this is one, there does tend to be problems with squatters. And so this has been these people's residence for 30 years. I don't want to have any issues. And so I went back in and I said, okay, guys, so how much stuff do you have there? Thinking it was, I don't know, a couple of personal items. And they're like, oh, no, the entire apartment. What do you mean the entire apartment? What do you mean? So I then accompanied the former owners to my new flat after they gave me the keys and sat in their flat while they packed up all of their things all day yesterday. It was the most awkward.
Wow. Does that have to be the worst checkout in history, right? That has to be like, imagine living somewhere for 30 years and then having to pack it in front of the person that's just bought it.
Yeah. Luckily, the former owner was the former imam of the community. So there's a mosque really close by. And man, he knows everybody. He started making phone calls and all of a sudden, like, his community just showed up. So it makes me feel good about where, the community around the flat, that they really care about each other. But I mean, there was 20 people there within half an hour just moving stuff out. I mean, all the women came in and were packing up small things. All these burly men came in and started, taking sofas out and things. It was incredible. It was crazy. And there I am. They served me tea. They were so lovely. But it was the most awkward situation I think I've been in maybe ever.
What a way to meet the neighbors. What a way to get to know everyone in your local area, right? As being that person, the person who just showed up.
Kicked out the owners of 40, kicked out the former imam of 30 years.
I want to know. I want to know. Like, I mean, you've learned something there, Sarah, haven't you? Which is, always check that someone's actually moved out of the house that you bought before you put pen to paper, I guess.
Yeah, I tried to undo it at the end. I mean, I went to the notary and said, "Hey, I mean, I feel like in the States it would just be like, oh, we could just rip that up, So can we just pretend it didn't happen, just burn the paperwork, pretend." He's like, no, it's legally binding. I'm bound as my duties as a notary to. No, the apartment's yours. We can't undo it. And you're like, oh no, what a nightmare.
Can we burn the paper? I love it. I love it. Good. I'm with you. Let's burn it. Let's burn the records, but it never happened. Like, if we all say this didn't happen, then I wasn't here. Like, let's all go home. But I think quite good though, just to get it done. I mean, sure, it's an intense way to start, but it's at least now you're not waiting 2 more weeks to see if they move out or not.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, it's done. I changed the locks and everything, and I mean, I think it went as well as it could given the circumstances. I mean, they seemed to understand. It was just awkward. Yeah, there's no other way around it.
Well, look, you've been busy. I've had nothing as exciting as that happening in my life at all, really. I think summer's just been meandering on. No international incidents. I've not offended anybody or done anything at Barcelona Airport like I did a few weeks ago. So that's good. Been keeping out trouble. But yeah, let's let's get into it. So we'll do SDR highlights. We've got a few, and then we'll talk about the big news that everyone's talking about this week. Have Marriott saved Sonder? Very, very interesting deal in the industry that's gone on here. Partnership, should I say? Second one, they're turning off the water in Seville. Probably something that you're quite familiar with as the sort of landlord that evicts people from their house. So, did you turn the water off that day?
I didn't, but I'm paying all the bills. So if they had stayed longer, they were already in my name.
All those cups of tea that they were making, you're actually paying for the water for the whole thing.
I know.
Right?
Can you imagine?
So yeah, you've got experience with this one. So they're turning off the water in Seville, illegal rentals, having the water cut off. Very interesting. And then we're finishing with the marketing wars, Booking versus Expedia. Lovely. Okay, Sarah, it feels like it has not been at all a gentle summer with nothing happening in the industry. Quite the opposite, which I know will really offend your European sensibilities. Tell me, what's caught your eye this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one for me is it's now official. AirDNA has a new CEO, which is amazing. So Rohit Biswata, he is absolutely fabulous. So earlier this year, AirDNA originally was bought out a couple of years ago by a company called Alpine Investors, and we were nested under a different parent company, and we were moved under a new parent company, which Rohit was leading earlier this year. And so he kind of officially joined AirDNA in an advisory capacity earlier this year and is now taking over. I've been working with him for several months now. He has fabulous ideas on product and expansion and just the way that he views the world. His background in finance and operations is going to be great, I think, for us. So I'm super excited. It's nice to have some fresh eyes in there, I think, and really excited. So he's going to be kind of leading the charge on our product vision as well. So yeah,
very cool.
It's all exciting.
Very cool. Well, you're a company that tends to do things right, so I'm excited to see where this next part of the chapter leads you. Is he based in the US?
He is, yeah, based in the US. He's out in Denver right now for at least the foreseeable future for the next few months, which is where most of our product and engineering team is housed. So he has a little bit of a technical background, so he gets into the weeds and is diving into the code and doing all sorts of things that I don't really understand, but glad that he does. So he's been having a great time just kind of getting to know the ins and outs of how all the data works. And yeah, he's super data driven as well in his approach. So I think it's going to be great.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm sure once he has a week in Barcelona, he'll decide it's important that he spends at least 12 weeks a year in Barcelona because it's that kind of city.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Unfortunately, he'll experience the €7 visa waiver fee that all non-Europeans are being charged now to enter Europe. Thank you, Europe. Makes me feel very unwelcome. So thanks, Sarah, for that. So that caught my eye this week. So as of next summer, my lovely French, Spanish, or Italian holidays are going to have that little surcharge on them, which I think it's interesting. I joke, of course, it's only €7, but I think it's interesting. We've talked about tariff taxes on the show quite a lot. I think this is an interesting move. I really do.
I think it's parity. So the US for a while has had the ESTA sort of visa waiver program, and I think that's $10 or $11 to go to the US for Europeans. So I think it's just parity. I don't know, it's tit for tat. It's about time.
Tit for tat. There you go. There you go. Good. And that's coming from an American. Fine. Okay. Good. So eye-catching this week. Well, more examples of European cities enacting regulation. This time, what's caught my eye is Bruges, the city of Bruges, because they have actually suspended giving short-term rental licenses in the historic centre alongside planning permission for hotels. So the whole thing is being looked at in the round, which I think is really interesting because we've been calling for this quite a lot, right? So look at your areas. Where do you feel like you have enough tourists already? And maybe think about, if you're going to do short-term rental licensing suspension, you should probably also do hotel license planning permission suspension. So I think this is interesting. And they've obviously had a look at this. Clearly, the city of Bruges wants tourists. They're not saying no to tourists. And as far as I know, no one's been attacked with a water gun yet in Bruges So it feels like they're trying to take a pragmatic approach, and they have just isolated this to the historic center. We know city planning is hard. We come back to this a lot. So I think this is one for us to watch, because I'd imagine, given that we know in the short-term rental industry the barriers to access are very low, I would imagine we'll start to see a ring of short-term rentals pop up right around the area that has been banned within outside the ban. So, or suspension, sorry, to use proper terms. So I think we should just keep an eye on it. And I think, Sarah, you'll probably have in the not too distant future some decent data for us we can look at to prove that point. And I imagine short-term rentals will actually come before hotels, because hotels have to do far more planning and consideration before they open a new site. So yeah, that caught my eye. I'm sure it did you for the same reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, and you make a really good point, because short-term rentals are so nimble and they're so much easier to set up. Our industry tends to be sort of at the forefront of capturing any kind of new demand, for whether that is for tourism or whether it's for business and other types of travel. So I'm really excited to kind of keep an eye on it. You're absolutely right. It's what normally happens. Things pop up right around the barrier and then they start expanding and then people start going to different areas. But yeah, it's one to watch. So hopefully we'll have
Why
some
not?
data
Why not? So
once.
yeah, if you're a restaurateur or a cafe owner on those areas of Bruges, you'll be rubbing your hands together now, thinking you might be in the new trend. I mean, who knows?
Fun.
Keep an eye.
Right.
We'll even go live from Bruges. Come on, let's go live from Bruges. Let's see what's going on. If we have to go to these kind of places. By the way, if anyone's not been to Bruges, go. Oh my lord, it's fabulous. Sarah, have you been?
I've never been. No.
Oh, you should. You should. It's a thing
Okay.
of beauty. It's a real city of beauty, I would say. So yeah, get that on your bucket list if it's not already. And then finally, call back to last week. This caught my eye this morning. Expedia Group and Alaska Airlines partner to launch Stays platform. Now, this feels very linked to the article we looked at about Hopper doing something similar. So this is basically tying Expedia Group's short-term rentals, vacation rentals, and hotels in with the Alaskan Airlines points users. Again, I love collecting airline points. I'm not spending them, but someone must be. The ability to earn stays using your mileage points, and also if you're a Alaskan Airlines Visa credit card holder, you also get access to the points here. So it's interesting, Sarah, because we're seeing this roll up, aren't we, continuously, of like points providers and hospitality brands, and it adds to what you were saying last week, which is you need the scale, right? If you're a company the size of Expedia booking Airbnb, it's probably worth doing.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How many Alaskan Airlines card holders actually are there, and how many people fly Alaskan Airlines?
I think they're quite big, aren't they? You tell me.
Does it encompass? Is it one of those where it encompasses all of the different subsidiaries? You know where, I don't know, like if you get Delta, that includes all the other like counterparts across Europe, for example. So I'm curious about that. I'll do some research. But that was where my mind first went, was like, how big is that? I feel like it's small, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Which group are they in? You know, we need to know. But I think, from my understanding, it does include regional partners in terms of the points. However, that probably isn't quite the same with the credit card, I imagine. But I think it does include everybody in the group. But yeah, really good example of someone looking at it and going, "Cool, we can roll this up. It's a new channel. This will come on later when we talk about marketing, right? This idea that you can continue to bid for terms, you can continue to invest heavily in SEO, but if you get some sort of B2B partnership, you've created a new window for yourself, and that's clearly Expedia's play here. So yeah, let's watch it unfold and evolve.
I just looked. There's 13 others. So American Airlines, British Airways, Fiji, Cathay, Japan, Malaysia, Finnair, Iberia, Qatar. I mean, seems decent, doesn't it? It's not just Alaska. That was where my mind went. I was thinking, how many people have
how many
Alaskan Airlines credit card? But if you've got the other big ones, then it's fine. American Airlines, British Airways, they'll be fine. Qatar. So actually, it's a good partnership. We take it back.
Yeah,
we take it back. Congratulations.
Well done. Well done. You've impressed Sarah, which is hard to do. Okay, you've impressed Sarah. Well done. And we're pro loyalty, right? We're pro loyalty if it's in the right place. Okay. Let's get into it. We can't not talk about Sonder. The reason I think this is so interesting to us SDR types is I was listening to the hotel crew talk about this. I don't know if you listened, Sarah,
Oh.
but they were saying that Sonder aren't that well known in the hotel space, which still baffles me. There's still so little crossover, right? How little crossover there is. Whereas in the SDR world, everybody talks about Sonder. They're almost a bellwether for how the industry is performing, given their size, their scale, and the types of deals that they're in. They're in whole buildings. There seems like there's a bit more risk, there's a bit more exposure. So they are a bit of a bellwether of industry health, and whether the taking over whole buildings, flex rental, whatever you want to call it, we would call it apart hotels potentially in Europe, whether that model is worth doing. And there's always this, like, during economic good times, they tend to grow, and then during the economically challenging times, they tend to scale it back. They've had a really tough time, right? That absolutely goes without saying. And that's why I say potentially this deal has saved them, or it's question mark has it. Sonder have sealed the deal for more than 9,000 units to join the Marriott portfolio under what's been described as a long-term strategic licensing agreement. They'll also have access to $146 million to enable growth and help with the integration of the properties onto the Marriott system. So, Sonder saved. Let's dig a little deeper. We know the problems, right? Burn rate is the top one. You've talked about this before. Burn rate with any company like this. Also, the need for additional funding to support growth and cover losses. The Nasdaq delisting that they focus on in the US, at the US Good Morning Hospitality a few times. General stock performance of other tech-enabled short-term rental solutions, and their one particularly. And then I think just the general slowdown we've seen post-COVID revenge travel boom, right? Which, if you're an operator that has management contracts, you see your occupancy decline. You can maybe weather a storm where you're in as deep as Sonder. You're really feeling the pinch when things start to slow down. So great deal for them in the sense that it's a distribution partnership. So they're now going to have their inventory listed on Marriott's platform and access given to Bonvoy members, which doesn't everyone just want to be a Bonvoy member? Sarah, are you a Bonvoy member?
I'm not a Bonvoy member. I should be, but I'm not.
I should be too.
I'm not joining anything. I need to join all these clubs and get all these points. I need to get with the program. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm pro, but I don't have any of them.
Yeah, let's join Bonvoy. I think you and I should do it. Let's do it. Now Sonder are on, we definitely should. Everybody loves Bonvoy points. Also market expansion, right? So clearly it's distribution, it's market expansion. By partnering here, Sonder's gained access to Marriott's extensive customer base and an audience that is unfamiliar with this offering. Going back to that hotel point, if you are a hotel junkie, you might never have heard of Sonder, even though we find that a little bit unbelievable. And then most obviously, it's inventory for Marriott, right? And it's inventory, and this is where I think it gets quite interesting. It's inventory that has been curated, chosen, maintained, styled, all of the good stuff by Sonder. And I think that when Marriott came into our space, they were a little bit freaked out, I guess, by how you couldn't standardize what the offering was. I know that's what I always heard around homes and villas. The 12-point list of all the things that an SDR had to have. And unfortunately, if it had 11 of those things, but it didn't have the 12th, you weren't making the list. And so they missed out on a lot of really good inventory, and they couldn't quite get their heads around the idea. Quite rightly, they were cautious of a Bonvoy member who loves Marriott going into something that didn't have a key feature that they thought every apartment or home or villa should have. So this gives them access to the short-term rental industry, but in a very standardized way. It's hotel light, right? It's Diet Coke, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's Diet Coke. And also, it gives them access to the urban market. And that's what I think is really at play here, is we saw this with Bob W. a few weeks ago. There's money swilling around trying to shore up urban supply when everyone's terrified of regulation. So if you have the right license, you've taken over a whole business, you've applied for planning, you've got the right license, you're much less likely to get shut down. It's pretty much impossible to get shut down in the short term, even though long term the housing stock criteria might change. So it's a really clever way of big business, big money, investment coming in to shore up the SDR market in cities. Kind of, as you said when we last spoke about this, Sarah, it kind of feels like the antithesis of short-term rentals and why it was created in the first place. But there we go. Maybe that's just market forces and something that's inevitable. And then clearly it also naturally gives them access to the extended stay market, people, digital nomads, as well as people just coming in for
Yeah.
3 days. Now, I've said a lot there, but I know you're going to have lots of opinions on this one, Sarah.
I do, yeah. So I think first and foremost, the CEO put out a really interesting post on LinkedIn, which I thought was super good in terms of being able to reflect on where things kind of went wrong and what the focus is for the future. In particular, he cited 3 different things. So in conclusion, yeah, the goals were just kind of too bold. So first and foremost, they tried to build all of their tech stack and commercial engine internally, which I think was just too much. They also pursued different types of assets where their differentiation maybe wasn't as obvious. And then in some markets, again, it was this burn rate that you mentioned earlier, Leo. They were rapidly expanding into all these new markets in the post-COVID sort of slowdown. It just was bad timing for some of that expansion. And then, of course, to support all of that, all of those ambitious efforts, the organization just grew to a size that was maybe not sustainable in terms of getting to a path of profitability. So I think that in terms of a decent self-critical analysis of kind of where things went awry was really good. I thought it was a great summary. And then what I thought was interesting is their new mission. Their new mission is to be the preeminent global brand of premium design forward apartments and intimate boutique hotels serving the modern traveler. And that for me goes back to that that sort of concept of what is a short-term rental versus what is the full demand for somebody who needs alternative accommodation. Because to me, in my mind, they're different. I differentiate them, and I think they're separate things. So to me, when I think of a short-term rental, I think of unique inventory. I think of either smaller operators with maybe fewer numbers of apartments, for example, or maybe more unique inventory, whether that's larger chalets or villas. I think of much smaller operators where it's somebody who it's their second home and they're maybe they have a management company, but they're renting that out when they're not using the property themselves. So my concept of a short-term rental is much different than what I would consider most of Sonder's inventory, which is a service department in more of an urban environment. And that to me services very different types of travelers. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of times people get wrong when they think about our industry is they don't know how to differentiate that, because we're often coined as the vacation rental industry. But I think that's maybe not correct. I think there's short-term rentals, or however you want to call it. And then within that, you've got vacation rentals and you have other types of accommodation, alternative accommodation. And so some are serving business travelers, some are serving somebody who's going to a city and maybe that's a couple and they want something just easy and they're there for 2 days and they don't want to deal with a local owner, versus like the experience that you had a couple of weeks ago at the festival when you went with your family, Leo. Like that to me is the heart of what a vacation rental should be. And they're very different types of inventory. So I think that differentiation makes it much easier for them to roll up into a hotel style inventory, because I think Sonder's inventory ultimately is much more aligned with that kind of model than maybe it is towards what I would consider vacation rental inventory. So, and maybe some of that inventory will change with this partnership. Maybe that is part of the goal through the partnership with Marriott, is to expand and have a little bit of a different type of income. But for me, this is their play to go. They've got homes and villas, which is more the vacation rental segment. And this is their play at getting service departments. That's how I see it.
I think you're probably right. I wonder if Sonder have fully realized that yet, because I think there maybe is slightly an identity crisis around what is a Sonder. I think that's fair, and there does need to be some guidance there. Like, yeah, is it something I'd book for a business trip if I'm traveling with my family and we want a kitchen and we want to not be disturbed and have to go through a hotel reception, all that sort of good stuff. I think there is a market for that. I would call it service departments, apart hotels, to use that European phrase, which I think some people hate the apart hotels phrase. I quite like it. I think it describes what they do, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think you're right. I think that is Sonder.
Mm.
And when I've stayed at Sonder's, and it's always been for business, um,
Same.
I
Same.
have felt occasionally, and it maybe I shouldn't have booked a Sonder where I booked it, but I felt like someone has obviously come and gone rapid growth. Let's throw up loads of these buildings, and maybe like so the example I give, I was in Nashville once, and I felt like I was too far from downtown. I was in a suburban area that would have actually suited a short term rental in terms of decor and style and
Yeah.
experience. The Sonder, and it felt very corporate. It felt very like something that should have been downtown, right next to the conference center. And conversely, I've stayed right next to the conference center when I've been in other cities. I stayed in one in Columbus, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant because I was like in and out, wasn't using it much. I think the only thing I brought in was like, a coffee I got from the local coffee shop and a sandwich, and put that in the fridge because I only ate half of it. I wasn't cooking, but I had everything there, and
Yeah.
I had the freedom. Honestly, Cole, I normally stay in hotels when I travel for work anyway. So again, I say that because you're right. Like for Marriott, they understand that world much, much more and know that actually, if someone's traveling for work and they're away for a full week, I can see how they veer into the service department world. But Sonder then has to get itself together and make sure that they're comfortable with that direction that they're heading in. Because right now, I don't think they have a really strong brand identity. I think they're trying to play in a few different camps, right? They're trying to be a rival to short-term rental. And you're passionate about this, Sarah. I love talking to you about this. The idea that short-term rental is unique homestays, bit more kind of like
Mm.
individuality, and it's crafted and it's hypothetically
Yeah.
built by a local or a local manager that really understands the area. And I think there is a difference, whether companies of Sonder's size and ilk acknowledge it or not. I think there is a difference. Certainly, as a customer, you feel that when you walk
Mm.
into it. So yeah, I think they need to work that out because Marriott have probably come to the conclusion that that's the direction that they think Sonder should be going in. I hope Sonder share the view.
Yeah. I mean, we'll find out, but I totally agree with you, Leo. Every time I've stayed in a Sonder, it's always been I never stayed in one in a suburban area, I guess, because I never really thought about that for Sonder. But I've always stayed in a Sonder in a super central location, whether it was for a conference or even if it was for a couple of days for kind of personal travel, but I just didn't want all the hassle. And I was going to be maybe working remotely from the property. So for me, I think that is their niche. I think they do that really, really well. And if they can kind of double down on that, and with the help of Marriott, who has all of the expertise to kind of help them grow that side of the business, it seems to me like a really no-brainer partnership, and a really exciting opportunity. So I'm sure they've had all these discussions internally, that we're not privy to. So time will tell, but overall, it's a really exciting partnership for them. It's really great to see them kind of turning the tide, and being able to get these kind of agreements in place. I think it's really great because we've had a lot of negative news about some of the giants in the industry lately. So it's good to see something positive.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good conclusion. Watch this space. Sarah, they're turning the water off in Seville. Tell us more.
They're turning the water off in Seville. Oh, it's just classic Spain, isn't it? So, the office of the mayor of Seville has announced plans to cut off the water supply to short term rentals in the city that are being illegally rented out by property owners to tourists. So yeah, pretty much the mayor of Seville has made an agreement with the state run company. It's called Imacesa, to halt water supplies to anybody who doesn't have a license. So right now in the city, there are regulations that stipulate that, similar to what happened in Madrid at first, if the property is not on the ground floor, then it needs a separate entrance into the building if it's going to be operated as a short-term rental, which of course cancels out most of the apartments in the city, because how do you build a second entrance? It's basically makes it almost impossible unless you buy up what in Spain is like a local, so like a business that has a storefront where maybe they have an entryway into some kind of stairwell. That would be the only way basically to do it, which is what happened in Madrid. They made this regulation and then all of a sudden the prices of storefronts went up massively that had any kind of connection to the building. So we'll see if that's been happening. And then there's also a parliamentary bill that would ban any kind of new short-term rentals in the city's Old Town and then the western neighborhood of Triana, which is pretty well known across the river. So Yeah, according to this council, they basically have put together a committee. The committee so far has identified 715 illegal tourist apartments. The mayor has announced a zero tolerance approach. Even though they've only found 715 so far, they estimate that between 5,000 and 7,000 holiday rentals are operating illegally in the city. I need to find out how many licenses they have or they should have, because currently there are 7,473 active listings in Seville right now. Of these, 49% are available for more than 270 days a year. So I would consider basically half that inventory is what I would consider full-time rentals. And then to put this into perspective in terms of the growth, which I think, again, we're talking about an over-tourism problem rather than a short-term rental or a regulation problem. In August 2021, there were 4,100 listings active, comparing that with 7,473 today. So there's a massive, massive increase. It's nearly doubled in the last 3 years, right? And the interesting thing is, if they think there's potentially 7,000 out there, how many licenses do they have? They must not have many licenses, because there's, what's that difference? Even at that upper limit, it's 400 rentals that would be licensed, I guess, under that scenario. So yeah, apparently they're going to start cutting off all the water. It would throw a wrench in your plans.
Well, it sounds like they
sure.
haven't got control of the situation at all, right? And then
No,
this
they have
seems
no
like
idea.
another crazy. It seems like the old saying, if you're in a hole, stop digging. This does feel like potentially someone down at the city planning office needs to stop digging, not start turning off water. Imagine that midweek, you're sort of you're mid shower, that really bad when you've just got all the soap on and then it goes. That'd be the worst, wouldn't it? When we've got all your soap and then it cuts out. In all seriousness, it really shows you kind of, I guess, how lackluster certain towns and cities are at having a plan and a strategy for this stuff, but how you need to have one, right? Rather than, and if you build a plan with local businesses, local short-term rental operators, and you work together, you can come up with proper solutions and scenarios rather than all of this headline grabbing stuff. I was speaking to a host yesterday in the great city of Chester. I reference this because it's my hometown. Did you know I was from the great city of Chester, Sarah? Have I ever told you about that?
I have never been. I've never been. You never told me.
It's tiny. It's tiny. We should go. We should meet there. We should go. Former Roman, very important city in the Roman times. That was its glory days, really. So long before my time. But it's touristy, right? I referenced the Romans because it's touristy. And the host I was speaking with basically has great relationships with people on the local council, and they come up with really practical solutions to, we talked about this office class. So Chester's a city where most people don't work in the centre anymore. They work remotely, and the centre's become a leisure destination. So the city's leaning into this idea that when an office gets converted, some of that can go to short-term rental for people to have weekends and do shopping and do that sort of stuff. So it's having practical solutions means that you can manage the flow of tourists in your city the whole time. Whereas it sounds here, maybe I'm being unfair, tell me if I am, but it seems like they've never had control of the situation, and therefore now they're just doing headline grabbing things to show that they're trying to do something, and no one wins in that scenario, right?
Yeah, totally agree. I was just doing a bit of Googling. I mean, I can't find any real numbers, because in some places it says 23,000 potential licenses, and some places it says 9,000. So I'll continue doing digging on the Seville thing to see. But even if that's true, then all of the current active short-term rentals would technically be licensable if they had the right kind of apartment. So it seems, again, like they don't understand what's actually going on or the problem. Either whoever set up the number of whatever the maximum license is doesn't know, or whoever set up the new regulation doesn't understand what's going on.
Maybe it's as simple as the fact that it's August in Spain and no one's working. Maybe the person who set it up is just on holiday. That wouldn't.
Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. I'm just trying to think of myself at a short-term rental and the water goes off mid-shower, all soapy. What do you do?
What do you do? What do you? That is your, isn't it? Running through the streets of Seville looking for a gym to shower in. Please get in touch. Anyone who's ever had that happen to them. and a short-term rental. What's your worst water story in a short-term rental? And host, speak to us. Tell us if you're struggling also with local areas coming up with these sort of similarly strange proposals. We're way over time. I think we're going to have to leave the marketing wars, Booking.com via Expedia. It's something we can definitely pick up again next week because it's an ongoing thing. Headline: they spent 13 billion between them. And if you're a short-term rental operator, I think it shows you the need to probably think local rather than try and compete on SEO spend. But it's an interesting debate, so let's have it next time. Sarah, so nice seeing you. What have you got going on this week?
I'm here. Yeah, this week, not too much. I've got a chill week the rest of the week. Next week, I will not be joining you guys. I will be in the French Alps hiking with a friend. So I know it's you and Rafi. It'll be good. I'm really looking forward to it. Just total disconnecting. Don't judge me, Leo. I don't really know. It's called Parc des Écrins. That's all I know. One of my friends who is from that region just kind of booked things. I said, look, these are the hikes I want to do. I got on Wikiloc and just sent her a bunch of links. And then we found some accommodation close by, which I have a feeling I'm going to have some interesting stories when I get back because already the accommodations is a disaster. They've sent us emails saying that our Airbnbs do not include cleaning. The cleaning supplies are under the sink. And that it also does not include any linens and send us the size of the bed. So we're off to a real bad start. Like, they sent us an email like all in French, which luckily I at least understand French, but it was basically like, there will be no one there to meet you at the apartment. You will need to knock on this door of this other person and someone will give you the key. No cleaning included. Supplies under the sink. These are the size of the beds. Also no towels. Like, please take out the trash and clean them out yourself for the next.
Like, were you planning on driving up there or were you going to fly? So now you've got to fly with bed sheets, towels, the whole thing.
No, luckily my friend lives like a 2.5 hour drive away. So she lives in France. I'm flying to Marseille, I think.
I think it's Marseille. Yeah.
I think it's Marseille. So I'm flying to Marseille and then she picks me up at the airport and then we drive up there. It's like 2.5, 3 hours to the first stop and then hike the next day and then keep going. So I'll have adventures for you on potential terrible short-term rentals.
I can't wait to hear. I love this. It's like going back to the 90s, isn't it? Bring your own bed sheets and don't complain.
That's what it reminded me of when I used to go on holiday with my parents and our families, when we would go like rent a beach house in South Carolina. We always brought our own sheets and towels. We always had to clean afterwards. Like I remember as a kid, like having to vacuum and like clean the toilets and stuff before we left. I just thought it was crazy. I can't believe that we're going back to that. So anyway,
parents should be so proud, weren't they, in the 90s? You clean that up. Don't make a fuss. That the owner's coming back, and then the owner would come back, and everyone would be really jolly, but secretly looking over their shoulder to make sure they'd cleaned the house properly. So people say the 90s were a golden era, but in many respects they weren't. Certainly not being a kid during the 90s. A lot of expectations.
No, imagine cleaning up after your holiday. What a disaster.
Yeah. It's awful, isn't it? All you want to do is go to the airport and buy sweets. It's awful. Okay, well, Sarah and I obviously had really tough upbringings in the 90s. We had it hard. All right, Sarah, well, we look forward to hearing more about that next week. I've got wedding this weekend, so I'm very excited about that, watching two of my friends get married. So hopefully the weather holds because we're getting into that area. We're getting into the danger zone in London where the summer falls off a cliff, so fingers crossed for them. Alrighty, look, if you've enjoyed today's show, please hit like, share, subscribe on all the usual social channels, and until next week.